I'm pretty sure everybody here remembers that Sans origin that I covered over 5 months ago now, a video that is very popular on my channel. Well, a few months back I decided to try and get in contact with the origin creator in order to query some of the bugs that were actually involved in that origin. Due to my lack of playtesting of the origin back when I originally made a video on it, I never actually picked up on any of these potential bugs. Slayer at the time was in the middle of doing a bunch of things and was pretty busy, and over the past few months he's been slowly working on not just fixing these bugs and issues that were around on this origin, but actually entirely reworking a lot about it. And the love and care that Slayer has actually put into remaking this origin from the ground up can be clearly shown with just the simple sound effects and models that have been done with these ones. Whether it be redoing all the models and textures for so many different things, whether it be using an actual bone for the bone blaster, or changing up how the Gaster blaster works, as well as adding in all these beautiful little sound effects, whether it be just slightly changing the sound effects for taking damage, to even adding a different death effect when they die to something that you do with your origin. There are a total of 7 active abilities that come with this origin, and that is definitely a lot of active abilities to be aware of. And for those of you who don't like having a million different keybinds to keep aware of and keep in your head, as well as you may not even have the keys to do that because you may have other mods installed as well, I can assure you that when it comes down to this origin here, it is definitely worth having all those extra keybinds. The first active ability that you're most likely going to encounter is the bone ability. Basically, it is keybind to your left key button when you have nothing in your hand. So basically, when you start to mine for the first time or do anything along those lines, you will notice this silverfish pop out in front of you that turns into a bone, does a bit of a weird action. The quirks of this ability is actually pretty cool and interesting. If you, let's say, are up against a wall and a mob is right up against it, the bone will actually start spinning on top of the mob against the wall, doing a bonus and extra damage on top of it, potentially killing the mob most of the time. This bone ability differs drastically to what was present in the first version of this origin, which was just a simple arrow ability that came out of your hands whenever you use your left click button. Of course, the old version of this ability was much more usable because you can use it far more often because it's an ammo clip instead of having a short cooldown in between each shot, but I feel like the changes in how this actually works entirely makes up for that fact, mainly because it has a bit of a boomerang effect and tends to go on a bit of a gliding circle depending on which direction you shoot it, as well as the fact that when it comes across a wall and hits it, instead of just going into the wall and ending whatever damage it does, it will continue to repeatedly do damage until the actual entity itself disappears. The next major change between version 1 and version 2 comes with the whole defensive ability / your ability to dodge damage. Now basically in the last version you only have 1 heart. You also only have 1 heart in this version of the origin as well, so just always keep that in mind. But basically in the last version you would be able to dodge abilities, but when you dodge things you would TP to a random location very nearby. It kind of worked in a similar way to how the chorus fruit is. You can also see the potential problems with this one. First off, let's say you get randomly shot whilst you're down in the underground, you could potentially be teleported right back up to the surface of the world, and there's nothing you can do about it. This became a major problem when you head into the Nether and take any form of damage in the Nether. You'd be teleported to the bedrock roof, meaning that you have no way back down, and depending on what you have there, your run when the game would pretty much be over, unless you somehow find a way to kill yourself. With this version of it, it's less of a teleportation and more of a jut in a direction where you would have been hit. So basically it's like the knockback effect, just slightly more knockback off of the damage that you dodged entirely. Ultimately solving the most major problem that came with the last origin, where you'd be teleported out of, let's say, caves or onto the Nether roof. Your primary ability is your Gaster Blaster. Now this really hasn't had too many changes when compared to the last version, aside from the fact that it works properly for once, and it's actually got a little bit of a head model that comes out instead of it just coming out of your body itself, which just adds a little bit more detail. And then of course, better sound effects work than what was in the last version of this origin. Moving on from that, with our secondary ability, you have a Bone Shield. There's really not too much to talk about this, it's just basically a way to block ranged incoming attacks, but I do want to make a little bit of a comment on the little detail that it is, where instead of it just being a certain wall or something that comes up in front of you, it's a floating bone that just spins. It's honestly a little detail, but it's pretty cool overall. The next ability that I wanted to discuss for a brief moment is the ability known as the Bone Zone. Now this overall is a really cool ability, and it's pretty useful when you want to try and, let's say, zone an enemy that you're fighting when you're, let's say, fighting players or a collection of mobs. It's very easy to just get them conjugated in an area, put this in their way, and kill a fair few of them. Funny quirk with this ability though, you can actually kill yourself with it if you put it at your own feet, as it completely counteracts your dodge ability and just immediately murders you pretty damn quickly. So it's a bit of a funny quirk to that one, but it's funny and good nevertheless. Telekinesis also sounds like to be an interesting ability, but for the life of me I just couldn't figure out how to make it work. And yes, I did follow the tooltips, yes, all the abilities are keybind, I just couldn't figure it out. Maybe it's because I'm dumb and just don't understand understand it properly, or maybe it only works on actual players and not just entities as a whole. Maybe it's both. Clearly, I'm just too dumb to understand that one. We also have the shortcut ability, which it says it can stop time for half a second in order to allow you to do things, but that's not exactly the truth. It just gives you extreme speed, which, by the way, if you do start setting up attacks, like let's say you spam Glacier Blasters while you're moving forward, be very aware that you will start hitting yourself. Don't ask me how I know that. I am not dumb. I am just... Okay, I'm dumb. Don't worry about it. There's also a counter ability, but like with the telekinesis one, I don't quite understand this one properly to be able to like give you an opinion on it at all. I do think this is one of those abilities that is best showcased when you have another person in order to hit you or do things along those lines to you, because it kind of blacks your own screen out, so you have no idea what's actually happening. Anyhow, all the attacks that you do will leave some form of a poison-like thing upon whatever entity that you attack, and basically it acts like poison. Every certain amount of ticks it will deal a bit of damage, but the more times you hit an enemy with your attacks and the more karma they build up, the faster that this poison ticks and the more damage it does. Essentially, it's a stacking debuff that can become very, very difficult to deal with very quickly if you're not careful. Which this warning also serves to the person who stands themselves, because if you hit yourself with your abilities, like let's say your own bone ability and it gets stuck against a wall and you're up against it, it will kill you too because of that karma thing, so be very aware. Anyhow, one thing that I haven't explained to you yet is the two different systems. You got the fatigue system and your bad time system. We'll go over the bad time one in a moment, but your fatigue system, practically everything that you do will eat into that. Whether it be your abilities that you use or whether it be just dodging damage will eat into that fatigue. Each ability will use a certain amount of fatigue based on whatever the ability is. Like let's say your Bone Blaster will take barely anything, whilst your counter ability will take a huge chunk out of that fatigue bar. So basically be very aware of it. If you empty out the fatigue bar, you'll be forcibly stopped, blinded, and all these other bits and pieces, basically making you useless for a bit. So what else was I talking about before? Oh, that's right, the bad time mode. Essentially, the bad time mode changes most of your attacks to be either more powerful or different, but they also take more of your fatigue. Yes, I just read that directly off of the Origin ability itself. Shush. Only 4 out of the 7 abilities that you have will actually get affected by the bad time mode, which is the Bone ability, the Glacier Blaster, the Blown Shield, and the Bone Zone. Basically, it gives you blue bones on 3 of the Bone abilities, and the Glacier Blaster just does a little bit more damage. From what I can tell of my playing around, it might also do something else that I haven't quite picked up on. The dev will probably clarify that in the comments below. But overall, that was the Sans Origin version 2. What are your thoughts on this Origin? Let me know in the comments down below. What are your thoughts on this more freestyle review format of these style of videos, as I'm potentially might be getting back into doing Origins content again because I just have that hankering to do it. Either way, if you did enjoy this video, smash that like button, make sure to subscribe, check out this video on the end screen, and I'll see you guys in the next one.